night. It is that black curtain behind which we hide to feel safe after a long day. We close our doors, turn off our lights, and go to sleep, believing that the walls of our home separate us from the evils of the outside world. But what if evil had already entered? Before you close the door, we go back in time, until the winter of 1922. Hinterkaifeck Farm, a completely isolated place in rural Bavaria, Germany. The nearest neighbor is miles away, and the farm is surrounded only by a dense forest, the darkness of which swallows everything as soon as the sun sets. Andreas' family. A quiet family, living a boring daily routine. But one night, in the colder middle of the night, that routine began to crack. Father Andreas woke up to a very faint sound. It wasn't the sound of the wind. Rather, it was the sound of footsteps. Heavy, slow steps coming from above, from the wooden attic of the house. Everyone in the house is asleep. Who is walking over their heads at this hour? He convinced himself that he was just a stray animal, or perhaps the wood of the old house was expanding due to frost. He went back to bed, but his eyes didn't taste sleep. He felt that there are eyes watching him from between the cracks in the ceiling. The next morning, Andreas went out to inspect the surroundings of the farm. The ground was covered with a pure white layer of snow that had fallen at night. As he was walking, he suddenly stopped, and the blood froze in his veins. There were human footprints. Clear, deep traces emerged from the depths of the dark forest, heading straight towards his farm door. Andreas follows the traces with his eyes, come closer to the door. Then he looked around to look for traces of the return. There were no signs of returning. The steps came from the forest and entered the house, and she never went out. This means only one thing. There is a stranger. He lives with them in the same house. He breathes their air, watches them eat their food, and listens to their breathing while they sleep. Strange events began to unfold in suspicious silence. The house keys disappear without a trace. A strange newspaper they didn't subscribe to suddenly appears on the kitchen table. On consecutive nights, the new maid would hear whispers coming from the walls. Whispers whose language cannot be distinguished, as if someone is planning something in the dark. This unknown guest had been living on the roof of their house for days, maybe for weeks. He watches them from the sunroofs, memorizes the details of their lives, and waits, waiting for the right moment. On the night of March 31st, the silence was broken. That night, there was no one left from Andreas' family to tell us exactly what happened. They were lured one by one into the barn in complete silence and into the dead of night. The police arrived days later and found the bodies of the entire family, but the scariest thing they found wasn't corpses. They found recent food scraps in the kitchen, warm ash in the fireplace, and a tidy sleeping place in the attic. The killer, didn't just end their lives on that terrifying night. Rather, he continued to live in their house, cooking their food and warming himself with their fire for days after he got rid of them, before disappearing into the forest as if he had never existed. Next time you wake up in the dead of night and hear a slight wooden crackling sound coming from the ceiling of your room, don't convince yourself it's just air. Good night. Since our childhood, our minds have been programmed to fear ghosts, of wandering spirits, of invisible things moving in the dark. We hide under the covers in the dead of night and convince ourselves that what we don't see, he can't hurt us. But what if what scares you in your dark room isn't a ghost? What if, of flesh and blood? We move to the USA, specifically to the quiet town of Pebble in Massachusetts, 1986. Bowen family home, traditional American home, warm and comfortable. A small family lives there trying to overcome their sorrows. But on long winter nights, the tranquility of this house began to crack in a strange way. It started with small details, so small that it's easy to ignore. A cup of water is left on the table at night and is found empty in the morning. The closet door was closed and the family found it ajar at dawn. Then it evolved. In the dead of night, when the house was plunged into complete silence, the two girls could hear voices coming from behind the walls of their room. Slow clicks, light, intermittent knocking, nail-like scribbles trying to make their way through the wood, and sometimes the sound of heavy breaths that seemed to come from inside the wall itself. The family thought the house was haunted. An angry soul shares the place with them. Terror began to gnaw at their souls, and every night they would lie in their beds, watching the ceiling and walls, their eyes open in the dark, listening to those scribbles that were getting closer and closer, until that night came. The night that changed everything. The father realized at that moment that what he was sharing home with was not an otherworldly entity. He quickly pulled the two girls into one of the rooms, closed the door on them, and then began the search. He walked through the dark corridors of his house, opening door after door. Every angle looks suspicious, and every shadow seems to move. He reached the basement. There, next to an old closet, he noticed something he had never noticed before. A small wooden board in the wall, which looks like it has been moved. A very narrow cavity separates the interior wall of the house from the exterior structure. The father approached slowly. He turned on his flashlight inside that dark hole. He didn't find a ghost. He found two human eyes staring directly at him from inside the wall. There was a young man. He has been living within the walls of their house for months. A stranger built himself a small space behind wood and plaster. He slept in the walls during the day, and in the dead of night, when everyone was asleep, he was crawling out. He walks into their rooms, eats their food, stands next to their beds to watch them breathe, then returns to hide in the wall before sunrise. Next time you lie in bed in the middle of the night, you hear a slight scribbling or crackling sound coming from the wall next to your head. Before you reassure yourself and say it's just bugs or stretching in pipes, ask yourself first, is the wall you sleep next to thick enough to hide someone inside? Good night. We all have that simple dream. To work hard to buy a dream home. A home in a quiet, safe neighborhood where we can see our children grow up in peace. We choose our homes carefully. But have you ever asked yourself, what if the house, who chooses us? 2014, United States of America. Specifically the upscale town of Westfield in New Jersey. A quiet neighborhood. Its streets are decorated with trees, and its neighbors exchange greetings with friendly smiles. There, the Broads bought their dream home. Beautiful classic mansion number 657 on Boulevard Street. The family was very happy and started making some adjustments before moving in. But before they slept one night in that house, they received a message. A white envelope without a sender's name with the elegant handwriting to the new owner. The father opened the letter, expecting a welcome from a neighbor. But the words written on the paper were enough to freeze the blood in his veins. The father read the lines that say, "House number 657 has been the focus of my family's attention for decades. My grandfather watched this house in the 20s, and my father watched it in the 60s. Now it's my time. Do you know the history of this house? Do you know what's hiding within its walls?" The letter had one signature at the end, the Watcher. The father tried to convince himself that it was just a silly joke. But days later, in the dead of night, the second message arrived. And here, Anxiety turned into pure horror. This time, the observer wasn't talking about the house. Rather, he was talking about their children. He wrote terrifying details in his letter, mentioned the names of the 3 children. Male age. Even more terrifying, he determined exactly which rooms they chose to sleep in on the top floor. It was written to them verbatim, "I saw you bringing young blood to me. Will they play in the basement? Or are they afraid to go down there alone? If I were them, I would be afraid. The basement is very far away, and you will never hear their screams." Imagine this situation. You are standing in the kitchen of your new home in the middle of the night. She turns off the lights and looks out the glass window towards the dark street. You see nothing but darkness, but you know for sure that there is someone standing in that pitch darkness, looking at you, counting your breaths. Is he the old neighbor who smiles at you every morning? Is he the person who walks his dog in the evening? The horror here doesn't scream at you, it sits with you at the breakfast table, walking behind you in the street. The messages continued. Includes details of private conversations that took place inside the locked house. The police intervened, private investigators and federal agents came and went. However, no one was ever able to reveal the identity of the observer. The Broads never slept a single night in their dream home. They sold the house at a huge loss and fled with their lives and children, leaving house number 657 for eyes that never sleep. Tonight, when you walk around your house to turn off the lights and make sure the doors are closed, and when you pass by a glass window overlooking the dark street, always remember, the glass works in 2 directions. And if you don't see anyone outside, this does not mean that no one sees you.